Welcome to Socialcast, your go-to place to learn about marketing, the latest social media news, and insights. Brought to you by Social Bakers.
Welcome to the next podcast episode. In this episode, we speak to Juraj Holub from Slido. Slido is a company that helps literally anyone get the most out of their events, either virtual or physical. He has a lot of really practical advice. I think it will be very useful at this time. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, Juraj. Well, welcome to the Social Bakers podcast. It's really good to have you on with us. Welcome.
Mantas, thank you so much for inviting me. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah. What's the pace like right now in Slido? How's it going working remotely? And can you maybe tell us a little bit about your role at Slido and just a few sentences about Slido itself?
Sure. So my name is Juraj Holub and I'm the chief meeting designer at Slido. And what I actually do is I help our clients design more interactive meetings, more interactive conferences and presentations to make sure that they really have an impact on their clients, on their team, or on their attendees. And for those of you who are not aware of Slido, Slido is an audience interaction platform that helps you engage your live as well as virtual audience with the live polls, quizzes, and Q&A. So creating sort of a bridge between the speakers and the audience, wherever they are, whether in the room or spread across the world.
Right. So what's the pace been like for you in the past few weeks? I can speak for myself. It's been quite a time, a challenging one and an interesting one, and a time for a lot of learning.
Absolutely. Well, the coronavirus outbreak hit the world by storm, and in 30 days, everything basically changed. The towns are now under lockdown, sometimes even countries, and the same goes for classes, events, and live meetings that are being canceled around the world. So just a few days ago, they announced that the Olympic Games will be postponed till 2021, which is absolutely unprecedented. And it largely impacted how we work basically again. And we do understand the challenging situation that many of our clients are currently in. And we try to be there during this transition period that they are basically undergoing, whether it's a switch to remote work or a switch from live to virtual events. So our hearts are definitely with them, and we try to help them to make the transition as smooth as possible.
Yeah, so that's why we got you into our podcast, and we really wanted to speak to you about this. So everyone's moving towards everything virtual now, and the events industry being hugely affected by this. And well, let's talk about that. So virtual events, is it a virtual event? Is it a webinar? How should we think about this? What's the actual difference between the two? Maybe that's the place to start.
Absolutely. There's been also a complete outbreak with the term virtual happening across the whole internet. And just a very easy distinction between the webinar and the virtual event is as follows. Webinar is an online presentation that you basically give to your online audience. It usually has one topic and it's up to 60 minutes, ideally 45, because then you really start losing people. And its purpose is basically to educate people, or just use it for marketing purposes and educate your clients on how to better use the product, or just move them down the funnel, or anything in between. When we take a look at the virtual event, it's usually a multi-session event where you basically host people in an online environment. It's longer, it contains more topics, it has an agenda, and very often, and this is a little bit more complex, it often covers other areas of events that we know from the physical environments. So it might even include networking, or sometimes even a virtual booths in a form of a trade show.
Yeah, and that's I think leads me to my next question. So when we think about the structure of these events, I think it's really clear when you think traditional event, there's a venue that people attend to. They know that there's going to be, a couple of keynotes. Maybe they'll miss some speakers, but they'll network in between. They have some coffee, free lunch, maybe later go to a bar with a couple of people from the event. How do you actually move that entire experience online?
That's a question that a lot of people are asking. I would start with the following. You cannot expect to copy this kind of experience. I mean, like 100% to the virtual environment. It's simply not possible, right? So you have to reinvent the formats to a certain extent. How long the presentations are, how you structure the networking, what kind of tools you are actually using. And in general, when we start talking about the virtual events, you usually have like a three types of virtual events. So the first one is something that is called a hybrid event. Before the lockdown, it was you had speakers delivering their presentations from a studio, and usually a small group of audience was sitting in front of them, and that's why they're actually called basically hybrid events. You can still replicate this. So you have one studio where you have all the presenters basically delivering their presentations. These talks are being live streamed to your attendees wherever they are basically sitting. They usually watch that live stream on a dedicated page, or whether you are using a more robust live streaming solution, you just watch it directly over there. So that's one type of the virtual event. Then you have the second one, which is basically the fully remote, or some people call it multi-hub events. So you have speakers joining all from different locations, from different hubs, and you also have all attendees joining from different places, right? So everything is happening in the virtual setting, and they are fully hosted on a video conferencing platform, or just any other custom solution to which everybody connects. And then the last type of the virtual event is asynchronous events. I'm sorry for that. And you've got actually event planners recording the talks, or asking speakers to record the talks, and then just unlock them based on the agenda, right? So unlock the morning chunk, so people can watch it, then unlock the afternoon chunk, and again, people can watch it. What's really important over there, and this is also what's happening, event planners are putting some live sessions in it, just to make it more than just a YouTube stream of videos, right? So that's really important, and touches on the next topic that we'll be talking about, and it's the importance of interaction in virtual setting.
Yeah, that's actually right after this podcast. The next meeting that I'm going to is to discuss with our events team of how we're pulling off our next live event. So some of the tips you shared, I think, are just so valuable, and I personally haven't considered that you actually can do a pre-recorded sort of section of the event, which lightens up the load, I suppose, on the team.
Absolutely. And this is what we discussed internally in the team, that the quality of pre-recorded talks is usually higher than when you just do them live. Because you can give your speakers some tips, on how to record those particular presentations. They have multiple takes. You can tell them what to improve about their background, their delivery, etc. On top of that, you can edit those basically presentations. And then you have a huge opportunity when you want to deliver some kind of a presentation live. That's what makes it so valuable, that when you have that speaker delivering something live and putting all that effort and all that practice into it, just get the most out of it. Make sure that there is a bridge so people can interact with that person, because that's what makes it so valuable and so different from a pre-recorded session.
Well, big part of going to an event, and as a speaker too, is that you have an audience there, and you get sort of direct engagement from an audience, and probably you guys at Slido must know some tricks of the trade of how do you get audience engagement up virtually.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Exactly as you said, when you are presenting in the online environment, you don't have those visual cues. You can't see the faces. You can't see whether somebody's falling asleep or just playing with his or her phone. It's really impossible to know whether the person is not preparing a dinner, or just responding to the client event. And you're right. One of the very few ways how to get that instant feedback from the online audience is through the polls. So with the live polling, you can let people be a part of your talk. So ask them a question, engage them, ask anything that basically touches on your topic to create that kind of a virtual bridge. And what is really difficult in this virtual setting is that in live environment, there are many other, things how to engage people. But seriously, over here, you need to do it even more often. So if we say that engage people every 10 minutes in the live setting, I would say engage them every 5 minutes in the virtual setting. And this week we ran a webinar, which was the largest to date. We had 160 people joining at the start, 170 was the peak, and 150 stayed till the very, very last minute. And we were like, wow, so 90% of people actually stayed till the very last moment. And we just took a look at that webinar and tried to find out like what worked. And one thing was that we used the live polls and the engagement every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So we split the content in a small chunks and delivered it really just within 3 to 5 minutes. And then we asked a poll question. Again, 3 to 5 minutes of content, and again, a poll question. And we even used the quiz, a short quiz, to engage more actively with people. So this worked very well. And also one more tip over there were 2 of us actually delivering that presentation. So that broke the dynamic again. A certain chunk of content was delivered by myself, a certain chunk of content was delivered by my colleague. So you have to play around with the delivery, with the length of the content, and also with bringing in some interactive points to your online presentation.
What are some of the blind spots to this kind of stuff? So besides a really stable internet connection, what sometimes goes wrong?
Yeah. Again, coming back to the importance of the interaction, and a friend of mine used a good analogy that delivering a presentation in the online environment might also feel like being a soccer commentator. You have to basically engage people at all times, describe what is happening, what you are doing, what kind of content you are delivering. So I would say that one of the blind spots, as you put it, is that you need to have an online host. It can be you yourself as a speaker if you have limited resources, but ideally invite your colleague and let him or her open the presentation, open the webinar, then give a word over to you. Then if you are running some kind of a Q&A session, just do it as a conversation. Let your partner, let your colleague ask you the questions and make it feel more natural to break the dynamic. And many people try to run webinars on their own. Again, it's a heavy load on their shoulders and it's difficult to break the dynamic. So I would say, think about bringing in an online host or bringing in a second speaker to really make that delivery more engaging.
Absolutely. These are super practical and really, really valuable tips. I really appreciate the depth of your advice here. Who can we learn from? Which brands are doing this right at the moment?
Sure. So in the past, like many large events, they had a virtual component, right? World Economic Forum or a Pioneers Festival over here in Vienna. So they televised or live streamed some of these sessions, which is great. That's a great spot to look for the inspiration. So go through the list of remote meetings and events that already took place. For instance, there's a good event called Remote Future. Just a second. Now I'm mixing things up. I'll let you know later on. Basically, they recorded the whole session. They recorded the whole event, so you can watch it even afterwards. That's the case I was talking about. That 80% of their content was pre-recorded and 20% future remote, I believe it was. Yes, indeed. So watch some of these already existing basically events and draw some inspiration over there. And in full transparency, we've been monitoring and taking a look at the events industry, and people are very, very eager to move the entire conference to the virtual space. Currently, people are still trying to find out what kind of tools they are going to do, whether the infrastructure will withhold such a huge amount of attendees. So just keep a close look at those events that announced that they are transforming their live events to the virtual.
Yeah, we'll be sure to include the links to the conferences that you mentioned for our audience to easily find them. But if So a slightly different question, different discussion, maybe. Where do you see this move in the future? Do you think that the fact that we're now forced to move into this kind of model, is this going to stick? Are we going to end up doing live events more often, even when the quarantine measures are removed?
Well, it's definitely hard to predict. As I started, we had no idea what was ahead of us just 30 days ago. But I really believe that this will be a massive push for both companies as well as event planners to start thinking about the different channels to deliver value to their team or to their attendees. Because even in the past, live events have become one of the tools of the marketing mix. But at the same time, many have been questioning the value of bringing lots of people together for 2 days of learning, often in a form that they were basically seated in one spot and they were forced to listen to a series of presentations without any, without much interaction with each other or with the speaker. So coming back to what I said, I think this will push event planners to think differently about how to deliver content, but also how to get the most out of the live experience when you bring all those people together, and maybe start focusing on the networking side of things more closely. That's what people have been basically asking for ages, but we have been reluctant to do something about it, and basically we're stuck with the old formats of one-way presentations.
Right. And I suppose the effectiveness factor can be very appealing as well to some companies, especially if you realize that literally this is something that people can pull up from their living rooms. Essentially the cost of that is greatly reduced compared to a physical event.
Absolutely. And the other discussion that we had internally just the other day was potentially you could even deliver 1 day of content in a hybrid format, as I mentioned, that you've got people basically watching speakers from the studio and interacting with them, and then the second day would be spent on bringing people together and really focusing on the networking side of things, or on the workshop side of things, or on the roundtable discussions, and really maximizing that time spent together.
These are all brilliant ideas, but where can we get more of them? Where can we find where's the best place for us to read what you guys are doing? Maybe find advice from Slido, and you yourself, of course.
Yeah, sure. So just basically feel free to reach out to us at any time at support.slido.com if you want to read about these tips. It's blog.sli.do, or just put to Google search Slido blog, and you're going to find plenty of stuff that I spoke about. Or just feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. My name is Juraj Holub, as I mentioned, and I post a lot of these tips as the posts on LinkedIn. So happy to connect over there as well.
Thank you so much, Juraj. This has been a very insightful conversation and filled with personally they're very actionable tips that I know we're going to end up using very soon. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for listening.